My name is Sergi, and I have a sparring presenter, Jantine.
Morning, everyone.
So maybe a couple of words about us before we just dive in the topic of today's presentation. So I'm originally Ukrainian, living in Belgium for roughly 10 years. I already forgot when it was that started. And by vocation and education, I'm a pure mathematician. So finished applied science, doing the aerospace university. So the whole Agile team, probably the farthest in my mind from what I kind of pointed my life at. But then after that amazing mathematics kind of attribution, I spent the last 15 years learning the management practices. So that's, I think, the caveat that I bring to all of that, whether this is advising clients or leading Agile transformations. That was one of the best experiences I had ever, because when you have 12 Agile coaches kind of like shaping you, and then sometimes you're fighting with them and then trying to organize them, and they influence you, saying, yeah, don't tell us what to do, be a servant leader, and you say, what the hell does it mean specifically now? So a lot of nice challenges, but it also shaped who I am. So I would be very happy to present today some certain thoughts and learnings we, together with Jantine, have over our experience implementing the Agile transformations. Jantine?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So my name is Jantine, originally from Belgium, and still. I'm a mother of two, and I started as actually a quality assurance engineer in software development teams. And from that, seeing that a lot of things can go wrong throughout the software development lifecycle, and that a lot of things can be improved, and that Agile is a very nice answer to improve those things. From that, building further experience as a business analyst, Agile coach, enterprise Agile coach, etc. And now in the team with Sergi, helping our clients to, on one hand, become more Agile, but also to focus still throughout their journey on value, which is not always easy in this current context.
Perfect. So let's dive in, right? I think I have a task in the beginning a little bit to set this stage. What are we talking about, right? Which type of context? The problem that we face often is that large transformation programs, basically you can say, continuously fail. They burn huge portions of the budgets and investments without visible impact. And that's a problem of the like 3 out of 4 programs for managers, directors, VPs, to make sure actually what is being implemented has a real change for the organization, right? And it might sound a bit like that part that I just said is a bit of a cliche. That's why I want to demystify that. What means actually complexity? Complexity means several, I would say, criteria by which you can define how complex the program is. So first one is, let's say, things come to mind, is the geographical, right? Another one is the multi-vendor part, right? So there can be organization, there can be implementer of certain thing, it can be certain freelancers around, it can be several companies actually involved in the same program, right? Then there will be complexity driven by the multi-tech stack, right? There will be complexity driven by the fact of the connections within the portfolio. So, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think we kind of have stated almost everything, or try to state everything there. And that's what we need to realize, especially if we tap into the big programs changes, right? So the amount of the complexity that need to be taken into account and make a shift is not at the team level, is neither at the teams of teams level, it's at the level of the programs which need to show that when they burn 1 million a month, they have something as an impact, right? To be able to keep burning that every million a month. So that's a typical kind of, let's say, major program. And that's why how we came into this topic of like how to make sure that every one of 150 people who are in this program have a job in the next quarter. You need to be able to show the impact and actually see it also happening. Jentine?
Yes, so with that context of having all of this complexity, having a lot of ambition also, it's then very easy to translate that into a huge transformation or huge program plan that by its nature becomes very waterfally very quickly. And then you have this huge plan and leadership comes in and says, this won't work. Because we will have new goal setting in a year, we will have the market disruptions and whatever. So please fix this huge program plan, make it more flexible, make it faster. And then comes in obviously Agile, because that's what everything that Agile promises to do. Give you more flexibility, go to market faster, have higher customer satisfaction, better quality, etc. So people organize for their complex program in an Agile way. Now, the caveat with that is that the real challenge for your transformations does not necessarily sit in the lead time or in the speed with which you go to market, but the challenge also sits in your value. In a transformation or a lot of transformation programs, people who have started it have not thought upfront on how they actually want to identify the value, how they want to track it, etc. So the value of your transformation becomes like a funnel. First, you don't even capture everything. Then throughout your transformation, you need to manage your scope a little bit and you need to manage your change. So some of the requirements that were there from the beginning are not done anymore. And then all the way at the end of your value or your transformation, you don't realize everything because on top of the requirements that you dropped, those that you have shipped are not necessarily adopted because no change plan or no good adoption, etc. However, many leaders do, once they are in the mindset of let's go Agile, stay in the mindset of let's go for speed. We should make sure that we can have fast delivery. We should make sure that we can take fast decisions in our transformation. And if you do that, what actually happens is that you get those same uninformed decisions very quicker, very faster, more regularly. But if you don't focus on the value that's actually behind it, your transformation will still not be a success. To focus on value, we have an approach.
Yes, so and that's where born something like this. So we love to bring it first as a bit of like a stage waterfallish approach because for people it's easier actually to swallow in that way. At least for the managers. I think this is the crowd here would be way easier. And you can think about like that as this can happen per program, it can happen per epic, it can happen per feature, user story. Obviously, depending on the layer that you talk about of the scope size, it will mean a bit different things, obviously, right? So if you talk about the level of the program or like big project, let's say, in the value identification, you need to actually set the settings, set the expectations. So then there is a belief that need to be money invested, right? And actually, that stage, which is probably 80 or 90% of the people who work on the project don't see and don't know about. Because that's the conversation often happens between, I don't know, senior managers, directors, what is the business case? We really want to prioritize this. Okay, boom, boom, let's gonna assign a 1-year budget. But that thing will inform all of the other stages. So if you don't know about that thing, then like you don't know critical piece of the information to judge what is happening. Then the next stage is where the things become more concrete. So for example, value planning, that's where okay, we had an ambition, but now let's make it real. How we're gonna assess it is we have like customers and PS this level, this is what we're gonna achieve, which type of features need to drive it. or if it's in more waterfall settings, we're going to be going a lot to the operational level. So you actually tie into the real design. Right, and then goes to the value and scope management, so that you're able to make sure that whatever happens, it stays on track on what was initially thought of, or there is a good reason to change. And last but not least, having something happened doesn't mean that you would be able to adjust easily. So all the steps are important, and as Jantina just mentioned before, like there is a lot of traps on this track, because not only that only 1/3 of the benefit normally is actually identified and captured by the organizations, but up to 50% loss during the implementation, which we call value leakage. So it was expected that we're going to impact for 5-7 million of the benefit here, but in the end it's 2 times less. And then it will be the same for the features, right? But the logic would be different a little bit, right? So you need to understand in the beginning why you want to develop certain feature or epic, right? So that would be value identification stage, and the rest would be similar, but at the level of that scope. So then being able to focus on this approach rigidly end to end, you can not to say guarantee that the value, but you can guarantee that you will maximize whatever potential it has. Right, Jantina?
Yes, and obviously we are also talking about Agile, so that goes the same way for this value approach. It's actually very simple. In the same way that you organize your software development lifecycle in an iterative approach, you do the same for your value approach, and you nicely overlap them. When you do so, and when you make this value apparent throughout your cycle, what's important, as you all know, is that you focus on the mindset, the behaviors, the communication, and the organization for it, or the governance. So throughout your cycle, use for your communication, your mindset, your behaviors. Obviously, when focusing on value, your data helps. So setting an ambition and understanding what adoption would look like, what success looks like, but concretely in terms of we have an ambition of X new users, we have an ambition of X less errors, and so on. Understand where the gap sits. So if you have your site, why don't people click through today? And those gaps can come from what users tell, as well as what the systems tell in terms of metrics, obviously. Like Seri mentioned, this value mindset, you can apply it on all levels, whether it's for your epics, for your features, your stories, etc. But if you're new if the organization is new, we advise clients to start with a small scope, and obviously when you do this, also track the adoption, but share on this adoption, share the success stories, how many new users, how many MRR that was increased, etc. I mentioned the mindset, the behaviors, the communication. Obviously there's also the organization. In the entire framework, focusing on identifying the value is key, because that's where it starts, obviously. Otherwise, it's very hard to track what you're even doing. So value identification is the driver throughout all of your processes, on all your layers of the organization. And then from that, making sure that you look at the rest of all of the steps, let's say, planning for it, managing the change while still looking at what will bring the most value, and tracking the adoption through the different ceremonies or governance that is in place. I'm going to speed up a teeny tiny little bit because I still want Seri to we have 5 minutes. Perfect. So from a client example perspective, and maybe something that I didn't mention before, in your organization, what we help clients with is when they face a lot of complexity in their transformation, but also a lot of complexity in identifying their value or pulling up those business cases, etc. Logically, the higher you go, the more scope you have for your transformation, but also then your value case, the more complicated it gets. So when they're not so mature, we start on a lower level, more operational. The more operational you track, the more operational you set your targets, your ambitions, the easier it is. So from a client perspective, we had a client where they faced a lot of legacy, as actually many clients do, as over time, a lot of organizations, they introduce ERP systems, but custom built on top. They introduce many applications. So over time, it gets a hassle and a very complex. The first thing that we did in terms of making sure that the value is clear for then modernizing these applications and the entire application landscape is just create visibility and start tracking on base data. But the visibility was obviously very important to just already show a little bit why it's important. Then secondly, going to the storyline, and I think for there, what was key to take away is that building an entire value case for a huge program can be difficult, especially if you don't have data on everything, but it doesn't mean that you cannot show the benefits. So where possible, we showed very concrete and tangible benefits. Where not possible, at least we gave examples, and then going back to that organization layer, we showed the benefits more operationally, but then on examples to at least make it tangible. And then lastly, in our approach, sliding the iterative approach with the value approach, one on top of the other, we have worked with several teams to, for them, identify in their smaller portfolio of projects and programs, what does value look like for you? What are your drivers for value? How do they then link back to your very operational KPIs? And how can we start tracking them so that when you build back up to your vision and ambitions, where do your priorities sit in your portfolio and against the portfolio of other teams?
Thank you, Andy. I want to control, so that's my red part comes in. So I want to build on further on what Jantina has presented in terms of the example, right? So it was a specific complex legacy modernization program, which is in very good representations of issues we get, let's say at mid-level, which need to be brought to the senior executives. And that leads a little bit to a reflection, what happens in the scaled agile environments, right? So how to manage or how to apply the value realization to scaled agile cases and how to connect different things, right? Because probably the biggest problem I see for the scaled environments is that it's very scattered. Some teams have very rigid, let's say, measurement approaches, and then having measuring everything what is possible. Some trains have nothing, just like high-level intentions. So being able to put things together is very important. And before I dive in a little bit in this setting, so what needs to be understood is that, like, how the complexity metrics look like, right? So first of all, we have scopes of the organization's layers, but then we also have aspects from which we assess the things, right? I know, for example, when we were leading the Agile reorganizations with my team of coaches and Scrum Masters, right, they often come with this people and organization mindset, right? So we need to organize people, we need to make sure the teams are working. Yes, this is one definitely aspect there, but there are two very important other aspects, right? So first one is the capabilities. And this is normally what is the product owners, let's say product leads, product managers, or tech leads are standing for. They are creating the shit, right? So there need to be a very clear layer of this, how that need to be assessed and the efficiency of that creation. And then last but not least is the business, meaning impact on the P&L of the company, organization, product, whatever, right? So more talking about the actual outcomes. And normally the way you would think about is the business kind of metrics is the one which is the most visible, but the hardest, let's say, connecting what is done, right? So very simple example, if you have customer NPS, you never know where it is driven by the specific product feature that was released yesterday, or it whatever deviation, or like it's just kind of noise in the system, right? So you need to build quite a system there for the measurements at all layers to be able to catch those moments of the impact of the products that are being developed. And then last but not least important, the what's, right? So a part of the measurements and the assessments, it's very important, the commitment and the ownership. So one without another have no sense, right? That's why, for example, in some organizations, people hate metrics because basically they bring the visibility, which a lot of people don't like to. And in fact, if you can't measure, you can't improve. Right, and if one or another then it doesn't exist, the groundwork need to be done first. But okay, so I want to show you kind of like how we normally approach that for the client cases and what results it gives. So let's say we think about all the layers, we think about all the aspects, and we know that we need actually to do this, all the steps from the prepare and to run, as we just explained before, whether this is at the level of the stories, features, or epics, or even programs. And then you need to be able to connect all in these metrics 2 by 2, the organization and the aspects. And then you can think of, this is just an example, right? So there are certain things that Scrum Masters care at the, let's say, people in the organization for their team, whether this is team mood or the agile ways of working. But if you go to the VP of HR or something, that there are other stuff that he or she will take care of and think about. Is it the general employee engagement? Is there maybe certain people excellence? And these things would be different, but if you are able to connect from bottom to top, you're able to connect the organizations through the measures that you make. I mean, these are kind of made up a little bit. So actually for every team product, this would be very different, obviously, and especially in the side of the business. But let's say for the capabilities and people organization, this is often that agile, let's say agile capabilities can more or less align. So Scrum Masters, agile coaches, team leads, and whoever there. But that gives a bit the representation of this kind of how complex you need to take care of the connection for the scaled program to be able to show in the end that the whole this agile movement actually has an effect. What is often happens is that there is agile being run as a program, as a part of the strategy for a while, and then becomes disbelief because there is an inability to show the impact at the scaled level. Yes, you might show something in teams, maybe sometimes teams on teams, but what is the organizational impact is a big struggle, right? Why? Simple because it's a complex shit, right? You need to properly set up for it. So let me give you a couple of the examples. So first one is a lot of text. First example is a lot of text. But I think where you, like, if I voiced over, this was one of the first teams that in the Agile transformation I shifted from Waterfall to Agile. And I often call this rotten banana, because basically we did it over the weekend or something. So they were working whatever. I don't know if I can call it Waterfall. It was just whatever, to be honest. And it was pretty complex setup because there was 3 vendors, different departments, and there was total misalignment. And we just said like, and there was a perfect moment because 2 directors were fired. One on the business side and one on IT side. So I came to the leads and say, guys, this is a perfect moment to do something. And they were like so desperate or like didn't care maybe. Say, yeah, let's do whatever your agile thing. And it started to work perfectly in the second sprint, I think. But that's what, and I think to a degree it's a perfect example because it's B2B, it's very customer oriented. So Agile fits there like it's born for it, you know. And it was around like 3, 5, or 7 teams, depending on the moment where we were in there. And what was critical in that moment, and I knew that because that was the organization which was obsessed about the numbers, is to be able to show what impact that makes, the shift of over the weekend. what was before, what was happening during, and what the after. So if you look at the metrics there that we used, right, so being able to set up baseline, then ongoing through the quarter or two, and then after a time, so that was kind of a bit of the management summary that I was using, where behind of this there is 5 Excels or whatever. But what is important there, you wouldn't see anything super surprising in terms of the metrics, where this is time to market, CSAT, bugs, whatever. But it was very important to connect what is actually the team does with the outcomes, and then take these outcomes and connect what is the Directors Plus really care about. What is in their yearly targets, what is their priorities, and how that contribute into it. Without that, they don't care. So you need to build this connection and awareness, how this all contributes to the performance of the organization and their personal performance as well. And then the moment I had this, I could go to whatever, is it to VP or to any part of the organization and say, you see, here's how it works. There is no way you deny it. There can be conversation, how we apply. Is it Agile the right thing, or like we are super special, all of these classical conversations. But if anyone sees this, like, yeah, makes sense. Let's try because we can get better results, right? And in the end, and I showed the cost even, so it was even cheaper. So I think that sparkled a lot of the further build up, and basically within a year we were able to kind of reach towards the 80% of the digital organization, but it went way far, and that's where things become even more difficult. So this is the number. So before going to kind of the final closing, the reflection which I had along the whole Agile reorganization for like 3-4 years is that it was all about money and data. So I had, I don't know, about 12 Agile coaches, 40 or 50 Scrum Masters. So what I really cared about is, where is the money? Do we have a budget to burn to next month's quarter? So to be able to keep up the team, where the focuses should be, and do we have a data to proof point the whole machine? If I take care of those two things, the rest will come. It can be up, down, certain kind of areas were not performing well, certain better, but without this, nothing gonna be working, right? So that was actually the driver, right? So my proposal, use this to your own benefit in the area that you work, whether this is a team, higher than the team, is it organization, because that will be a vehicle if you are able to muster. It's very, very few people in the organization is actually able to work with. And then maybe towards the result. So what was actually the going on journey is that I think it started with one team in the year one. There was the same year we were able to shift the first tribe, but then the same year or second year, we were able to get first time in the strategy of the company. Then we shifted full digital, and then we shifted to the business operations. And that's probably the most amazing part. We started to do work for areas which has nothing to do with digital. Sometimes nothing to do even with projects. So very operational one, right? Obviously that goes a bit of more monstro type of things like a Kanban, non-Kanban, whatever. You choose the certain practices that apply the best. But that's actually where we could also show the results, which is amazingly even more important that was in the digital areas. So it became to a degree inherent, and then you can see the actual results for the program itself. So that's what we were constantly being challenged to be able to measure and assess, right? In terms of the impact that makes the whole movement, right? Why the belief need to be in place. So it was about the time to market, that the output or output of the products, right? Obviously, you see here more or less unified metrics, not like any outcome of the specific product, which can be also in net revenue or whatever. Cost impact and happiness of the people in the end, right? So if you put this all together, it draws such a nice picture. So sometimes I was not even believed in, right? So then we were going to the level of the teams and explain everything. But that was more than enough to show that this is how the programs make an impact. Yeah, I see. I already even forgot the numbers. 38 Scrum Masters. So that's all. So money talks, data speaks. So welcome for you to use it in whatever way you can. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Feel free to ask any questions if you have one. I actually do have. So, what is the most common quick waterfall trap you see teams falling into, and what we as a Scrum Master can do with that?
In my experience, it's only looking at the features. Did we deliver X amount of features instead of tracking? Did we then do what we wanted with those features? Have more users, have less errors in the system or whatever? And so as a Scrum Master, during your sprint plannings, even your retrospectives, and so on, looking not just at how is my team working, but what is my team delivering together with the product owner.
Okay, thank you so much. Any other questions from the room?
Either it was super clear or super rubbish, but thank you for your time.